welcome back to the Digital BGA YouTube channel. This week we are covering email marketing. Josh and I met with Heidi Mertlich this week. She is the email campaign director here at Digital BGA, and she made sure to give us her 5 top tips to have a successful email marketing campaign.
Yeah, so essentially what we're going to do in this video is go over the 5 tips that she gave us and just kind of talk about email marketing in general, how you can use it to build your life insurance business, and some of the, pros and cons of using it, some of the caveats to look out for.
So last week we talked about some of the costs of marketing, and we saw firsthand, and even with the video before that where I did the breakdown on the production of commercial campaigns, we saw how costly these marketing costs can get. So can you kind of tag off of that about why using an email campaign is probably the most beneficial place to start?
Yeah, I mean, the timing couldn't be any more perfect, right? So it's one of the most expensive times of the year to be marketing in general. So with the affordability of email marketing, the barrier to entry being so low, I mean, you need an email provider to do it, which we'll talk on later. You'll need a little bit of funds to use said email provider, but in general, for being able to reach a client that is willing to actually open an email at a higher rate than most people probably believe, just the overall barrier to entry, again, to use that phrase, is really low. And it's a great way to maybe strum up some sales and start building your business up this time of the year whenever other avenues are just too expensive.
Yeah, that's true. And also, on top of the barrier entry being low in terms of cost, the barrier of entry is also much lower in terms of the content that they have to create. You're working typically with flat images, things that you can make on Canva, or you can do with places like Elements.Envato or services like Design Pickle. We'll talk about this a little further in the video, but you're going to have a much easier time creating content versus some of the other forms of marketing that they're going to have to experience.
Yeah, and one of the options that you didn't even mention, which I'm shocked that you didn't with how often it gets brought up here at Digital BGA, is what if you're not that good at crafting the body of the email? Who is probably going to be able to help you out is ChatGPT. So there's a lot of options to get into this for next to nothing and not even a whole lot of brain power, really.
Let's dig right into these first 5 steps and get right into it. Josh, you want to go ahead?
All right. So number 1 is going to apply to about any kind of marketing that you do across the board, whether it's paid ads, whatever it is. But number 1 with email marketing, you need to determine the goal of the campaign that you're going to run and figure out who your target audience is. So with that being said, is your goal going to be generating leads? Is your goal going to be something along the lines of following up with past clients? So with that, I mean, you're uploading, a list of current clients, and this is going to be, the goal is like strumming up business with family members for a life insurance policy. Or is the goal going to be booking new appointments? So it's going to be the first time meeting with a new client. You need to define that, understand it, and build the campaign around that specifically. If your goal when you start the campaign doesn't match what you do throughout the rest of it, it usually won't work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there needs to be a congruency with your purpose and the people you're trying to reach, right? Otherwise, you're wasting your time here.
Right. So, and with number 2, whenever we're talking about target audience, a lot of people watching probably figure like I only have the one audience because I'm uploading my own data, which we'll cover a little bit more later in the video. But a little more outside the box would be, let's say you're picking up data from a data provider, whoever it is. We don't need to dive completely into that in this video. Mm-hmm. But are you going to make an email that is targeted towards a certain occupation, even something more broad, like a certain income level? If data could provide that, there's a lot of different ways that you can segment who your emails will reach, who you're going for, and that will determine later, what kind of headline are you going to use? What kind of content in the body of the email are you going to use? That might even determine, if you reverse the path, what is the goal of the campaign. Maybe if it's a cold email, you can't go for the same kind of warmth in the body of an email as a current client. So you have to think about those things before you actually start your campaign.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned data providers, correct?
Right.
Let's let's make this a hot point here, or maybe like a sub hot point to number two, which is building a high quality email list. Let's talk about verifying if you're using clean data. That's important and probably something that's not on the forefront of someone's mind when they're going and looking at the data they're being provided with.
Yeah, and I mean that's probably one of the biggest things for us as an agency that we've even dealt with is what good data looks like and what bad data looks like. So, some companies have access to different to keep things simple for people watching it. We don't need to use, how the data is aggregated necessarily or how it's purchased, because I think most people in today's world understand that that's all that's really being sold across the world is people's information, and that's what makes the
People
world
are
go round.
smart. They
Yeah,
people are smart. They know that when you accept all cookies,
yeah.
you're
Then you're done. Then it's out there.
yeah, which by
But
the way is ever changing. I remember when you and I first one of our first calls when I joined Digital BGA was you talking about the landscape is going to drastically change with how cookies are collected.
yeah, and shockingly, it did, but it didn't change at all for the consumer. I think we still just click accept, and I think the advertisers really dodged a bullet that they didn't expect to dodge because it stayed pretty close to the same. But
Yeah, we still all click it. Now that where it goes, that's the question that we're all kind of waiting to see, right? That's what
yeah,
I know.
and so you said the word clean data, and I have to talk on one point of that. Like a lot of people watching may not understand what the cleanest data really is, and it actually gets down to even free data. Like if you guys had to think about it, some of the cleanest data you have is the data of your current book of business. That is verified by, the carrier sent them documents to sign. You have that email. That's clean data. That's way better than any data you're going to get from a data provider most of the time. And then there is, just bulk data that you can get, and you can learn how to start segmenting your audiences out of that. But data in general is going to be a really big piece of making this successful.
Okay, and I'm actually asking you this because of my genuine curiosity. You're going to know more about this than I do. So, if there's clean data, there's obviously bad data, right?
Yeah.
There has to be repercussions with using bad data, right?
Yeah. And I use the example a lot with one of the biggest data aggregators in the world, obviously, with Google. The difference between, we talk about this a lot with OTT, with commercials, with the video you made about commercials. I'm sure we talked about
Hmm.
it. Google, for a long time, a big piece of their data collection. Of course, they have other points of data touching that we probably don't even know unless you go read their 700-page terms of use. But Gmail was a huge part of data verification. So you're going to enter a date of birth, your name, the email that you want to register, and that's essentially kind of where it ends. And then now you see new things entering the marketplace, such as streaming devices, which is going to take your address where it's pinging your internet. It's going to take your credit card, which is tied to your name, which is tied to your address. So you just verified an address 3 times in 10 seconds. And that's a huge part of data. So that should be mentioned is the more times it's verified, the cleaner it is.
Yeah, so there has to be some downfalls to using bad data.
Yeah. And so this is actually, something I didn't know a great deal about until we talked to Heidi about it. Like what happens or what have we gone through as an agency whenever we use subpar data, we can call it. I don't want to call the data crap. It's
Hmm.
just not as good as some other data, right? And she had brought up, just even sending it from that account if the data is not good. And I don't know if it completely relates to only, bounce back rate or the exact terminology for emails being sent out that get returned to sender, so to speak. You can get that account banned. You can get flagged as spam a lot faster, which in return is going to get that account banned. There's a lot of things that are a downfall. It's just not going to be effective, right? And that's a huge downfall too. Whether it costs you $100 or 10,000, like our goal is to sell more life insurance.
Yeah,
So
so not
that,
only are you risking the integrity of your account, you're wasting dollars.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like the last few videos we've made for this time of the year, our whole goal is to help everybody watching this channel save a few dollars this time of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. Remember last week, the average American between Thanksgiving and Christmas are spending anywhere from $1,500 to $5,000.
Yeah,
So,
on data. I'm just kidding.
they're spending that on data,
Yep.
bad data too.
Yep.
Okay. Let's move on to the next piece here.
Hold on. I'm going to
So,
touch on this part and then you can go into it. I'll just
okay,
segue right into it.
go ahead.
So, for good data, for anybody watching this, whether you're our agent or you're working for another agency right now, most of you are probably using a CRM. You're storing not only your client's information, but cold leads, people you haven't spoke to yet, just any inbound lead that's been sent to you probably went to a CRM. So you do have data. You have phone numbers, you have emails, you might even have some addresses. So that is good data to start with, and it's probably the cheapest, depending on the number of data points you have and the total size of your list. So if it was me in this situation after watching this video, clearly this isn't going to build the campaign for you. There's going to be a little research to do. But your CRM is going to be a fantastic place to start. Other social media platforms like LinkedIn could be a great place to start as well. So there's definitely options out there that don't cost a ton to get started. All right, so once we have, the data, or you're starting with your CRM and you know the goal of your campaign and your target audience, the next thing is going to be, somewhat more up David's alley here with creating the actual, what people are going to see. How are we going to make it look pretty? And I'm sure David, when he hears email marketing, he's like, ugh, because he always wants to make the fanciest stuff. And it's tough with email marketing. It's a lot of text. It's not as pretty as David likes to make things with what he does. But next is just, creating your headline and creating the body of the email and making it match what we talked about number one, making it match your goal and having it sent to the right person.
So I see it on our end, specifically with commercial campaigns. The way that an ad looks matters. Like that's the difference between someone clicking it and someone not clicking on it, right? We've even done campaigns where we didn't necessarily test people calling in, but just clicking on an ad, like the easiest point of contact, right? It matters how it looks. So, and you're right. I mean, this isn't the most exciting thing for me to cover. I would much rather make the dragons fly around the room and do the fun stuff like that. But in terms of the layout of the campaign and making sure that when people click into the email and they see like this is the top point that they absolutely need to see first beforehand, and they also right under that see where they need to click to move on to the next point of contact, that matters, right? What are some things that people can have on the forefront of their mind while designing an email campaign that will be successful?
Yeah, and I mean, you said a couple words in there that are spot on. So with commercials, for example, some kind of media, some forms of media, apologies there, you can win even when you lose. It's a lot harder to make that happen with email. So when you lose with video campaigns, there's something called brand recall. Your memory is still there. You got into somebody's mind, whether it converted that day or not. With emails, it tends to be, you use the word click when you were just talking, David. It's really your metric of winning is a click or no click. So your, actual headline to the email is huge on this, because if it doesn't win, it's usually just going to go to the trash or get flagged as spam. So that's where you're going to start, is having a really catchy headline.
It's the Mr. Beast method, right? I mean, yeah. I don't know if any of these agents they watch YouTube, but Mr. Beast is he is the best YouTuber out there. He generates the most views per video, but I've watched some podcasts with him, and he broke down how he has a team of people that just all they focus on is building headlines that get people to click and watch the video. And the video is going to be great when they watch it, right? But they got to get them to watch the video, right?
Yeah, this is a perfect example, honestly. It seems like it's not correlated at all, but it's huge. Think of this, everybody watching for an email campaign, is something like that. The video production is millions of dollars. And if the headline doesn't win, the view doesn't happen. Maybe for subscribers, maybe for people coming back, or maybe in your email list. Maybe, I highly doubt it, but maybe somebody really just likes reading your emails. But, if you under all the time that you're going to put into this, all of that effort, if that part fails, it can be a real metric killer for the entire thing. So you start there and then you move on to the body of the email itself, and you make sure that lines up with the general idea of what you're going for that target audience and for your goal.
Before we move on to the body of the email, the campaign that you're putting out, you're also competing with other companies that are spamming email campaigns that also have a team that are trying to get you to click on it. So your attention is divided. How many emails do you get flooded in your inbox from Planet Fitness, or you bought some product or whatever? Do you get what I'm saying here? Like, your email is competing against all the other campaigns that are trying to reach you. So that target, that headline, that title is extremely important.
Yeah. So an example, I'm sure everybody's like, all right, give us an example of this. This isn't an email thing. Whenever I talk about this, we've used this in videos. We've used this for Facebook ads. We've used this for text ads on Google. One of the biggest things that tends to work over the last 10 years, and it still works, is being clear and concise and usually introducing some kind of pain point. People don't tend to react to something unless it really gives a big urge to go do something, or it creates a lot of pain if they don't. So introducing those things can be really beneficial.
There's there's multiple different ways that you can introduce a pain point. One can be fear-based, like, hey, you're running out of time.
Yeah, and a lot of them can be just following your industry, right? So a pain point could be something if you know that a product isn't going to be available for very long. And I'm not speaking to a specific life insurance product.
Yeah, scarcity.
Or if costs are actually going to go up, because I'm sure everybody has seen ads where it says something like that, but the costs might not be going up. So it needs to be going up. I wouldn't start just making things up. Things like that can be pain points. It doesn't always have to be the life insurance side of it for a headline. It doesn't have to be like, hey, your family member is going to die, so you should get coverage. Like, that's pretty extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys, that probably sounds really morbid on this channel, but a lot of advertising for life insurance really does take that direction. I mean, there was a time from like 2018 to 2020 where you didn't see a life insurance ad that didn't have a funeral taking place or somebody holding a casket.
That's what, when we first started making our commercials, that's all that we were basing it off of, because that's what we were seeing out there. Like, now when you watch our ads now, they're actually bright, right? They feel good to watch. Yeah. They're happy. But when we were first testing, we were basing off of commercials that we knew were running in the market, and it was always a dark, rainy funeral. We color graded it to be like these deep blues and purples. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but I'm basically just giving an example that you're right. It doesn't always have to be fear-based
or that extreme. So I think that's where you were going with it. It is that over time we've actually learned that extreme is actually creates a negative. We don't know that for sure, but it must create something negative within the consumer as well, because it didn't work as good as just introducing more common fear points, such as money, time to actually enroll into something. AEP, for any Medicare agents watching that, time would be a huge one, because they actually are running out of time. They have 4 to 5 weeks, right, to actually do the open enrollment. Life insurance is a little bit different for anybody watching for that part of it, but it doesn't always have to be the scariest version of something to work. And we've actually seen that doesn't work as good as some other methods. All right, so once we have the subject line done, we need to move into the actual meat of the email, which is going to be the body. We will talk later in the video about A/B testing and things like that. But for now, you're really just going to think back to number one, what your campaign goal was. Think about who your audience is and what the message is going to say. And you really want to keep things really basic, short and sweet and concise. You may want to hit on a pain point again, like we talked about before, but overall, the simple messages tend to do the best. The more complicated you make it, the more you dress it up even, it tends to be a distraction as opposed to what you're really trying to drive home. So short and sweet. And then on follow-up emails, even, we've seen this, David, tons of times with our own marketing that is not email marketing, is that the same message, slightly worded differently, nothing crazy. It can be as simple as the way it's even said, the tone, which is tough with an email. You can't really have that aspect. But the same message 1,000 times tends to strike gold more often than, getting off track.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hammer it home. And also short and sweet, right? Not dressing it up too much. We're battling attention spans that are ever shrinking. Right.
Yeah. And you're being pulled in 1,000 different directions about every 10 seconds. I mean, I've seen it happen to you recording these videos. I mean, your cell phone dings and then our Slack goes off and then email pings in or somebody needs something. It's how it goes. So
And it doesn't help when you add ADHD on top of it.
No. And I mean, I think that that's the big misconception that people have, though. If you're trying to become a overnight marketer, right, is you think that you're competing for attention. So you try and do the craziest stuff to get it. But getting attention can just be saying what somebody needs to hear. Or if you think back to your target audience, what was the pain point that you're trying to hit? What need can you actually solve for them? What problem can you solve? And just letting them know that you can solve it 5 times could be enough. It doesn't have to be this crazy flashy stuff that a lot of people get the misconception that they need.
Yeah, telling someone what they need to hear, and then also striking gold and giving them that information when they need to hear it.
A really good example that just came to mind, this is completely off the cusp here, but I felt like when we started talking about this, for some reason, it came right to the front of my mind. You know who does a fantastic job with email marketing is mortgage lenders for people buying a home. Because what they do is they buy, again, we'll go back to this data sold every 5 seconds. The second you even think about buying a house, or you go to Zillow, or you talk to a banker, you get the same email, and all it is, they're all the same from every company. It's, we have this rate at this fix, and we can get you closed in this many days. They're talking about a rate, kind of a pain point with money. They're talking about how fast they can get you into your dream home. And then if you don't respond and you delete it and don't mark it as spam, you're getting the same email, presenting the same thing 5 more times. And guess what? Usually you buy a house with one of them.
Yeah.
So it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I love it. That's a great example. I mean, disconnected, like not related, but also completely related.
Yeah. And they keep it, and these are billion-dollar banks. You know, this is Chase, this is Bank of America, and they probably have a full team of email marketers that are doing exactly what you can do after watching this YouTube video. They're changing a line with a few different words, and they're going after it.
Yeah, probably have a team. 100% have a team.
Yeah, and I mean, they're like, look, I know nobody's answering the phone these days, so what am I going to do? I'm going to get them on you. Okay, and lastly, so you have all of that built out. All you need now is for, you know, your target audience to respond. And to get a response, you need to present them with an option to do so, which is your call to action. So most of you selling life insurance, you're probably going to either want a phone call to sell them a policy, or you're going to want to book an appointment. Maybe you want to even take some of that, you know, work out of it and have them book directly on a calendar. Whatever it is, you need to give them an option. And there's nothing really super in depth to go into on this topic. It's just present them with what you want them to do, whether it's a Calendly link or your phone number to call you.
And give them a place to do it.
Yeah, otherwise they just have an email that they're actually really interested in and they have nothing they can do. So you need to give them a call to action to move on to the next steps. So once you've reached that point and you're done with everything we've discussed so far, you move into number 4, which is just sending the actual email. And the best way to do this, really the only way, unless you're going to manually send every email, which will never work. So don't do
Could
that.
you imagine manually sending out 100 emails? 1,000?
Not even 5. No, not even. But to do that, you need a provider. So there's so many to choose from. That would be an entirely different video. We don't need to dive into that. But, you know, some that have been around forever that I'm sure you know the names of, like MailChimp, ConvertKit, Optimize to Convert. There's tons. They all have their own, you know, perks and benefits that they can offer you. Some may have some drawbacks that are worth looking into, but you need something that can automate that step, especially that step. If there's a step to automate in all this, that's the step to automate. So you need a provider to actually send out those emails. And once you get that done, or you pick your provider, really you're going to just get into some data points. You're going to maybe start an Excel sheet of looking at what is working. And most of these providers are probably going to break it down for you to where you don't even have to do that step. But you need to figure out when they're being opened, what time of the day works the best to get open rates. Maybe that's in the evenings. Maybe it's while people are working. It really depends on your audience. But that is going to be kind of how you sweeten the pot with this whole thing, and how you make it work is starting to hammer home on some of those data points for your specific audience that things are clicking with.
Some of these providers too, if people are worried about, you know, oh, I don't want to have to learn a whole new process. Most of these providers are stupid easy to use.
Yeah. And I mean, if there's even like a part of it that gets confusing, I bet you if you type that problem in plus that provider into YouTube, If it's something you're struggling with, it's something somebody else did too. So there's probably already a YouTube tutorial on how to actually use it. The
Yep.
information's out there for you guys to grab in 20 minutes if you need it. And depending on what agency you work for, sometimes a lot of the tools to problems like this are already provided. I mean, an example of this one specifically is our CRM. We have the option to automate email sequences out to the book of business that you have inside of it, out to the leads that you have based on the status of those leads or, you know, your actual goal of that campaign. But there's a lot of ways that you can go about doing this, automate that process, and start using a lower cost form of marketing to build your business.
So we've sent out, we've looked at the creation of it. Okay. We've looked at the content that matters, the placement that matters, right? Having a subject line that draws in somebody's attention, finding a provider or using an agency that allows you to send out those campaigns in an automated fashion. We've looked at all that. Let's talk about refining that process now, optimizing, testing.
Yeah. I mean, my favorite part of it, honestly, this is where I have the most fun with any kind of marketing is figuring out what works, making slight changes and seeing if that works or if 2 in a row are broken. And a lot of times for everybody watching it, it's going to be 10 in a row are broken. Then you hit the right one and you start, you know, figuring out what works. But A/B testing and optimizing is kind of the last step. But the thing about it is it's a step that never ends. Right.
Yes.
So let's say you get this to work. There's something that works better. And you're going to find things that work worse compared to what worked better in the beginning throughout the process. So that's never ending for your entire time as a life insurance agent. If you're marketing your business and trying to build it up, is A/B testing. So with subject lines, you know, slight twist, maybe using a different pain point on the next set of emails that go out to see if that increases your open rates. I know when we were talking to Heidi about one of our campaigns that we ran internally, she said a very simple change, essentially took it from a 33 to, David, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was like a 47% open rate. So 14% with a slight change. Could it have gone down to 25? Yeah, it could have, but you never know until you try it, and it went up. And now you build off that 47%. And the biggest thing you can do that I can say from my experience is you need to make sure the variables are very distinguishable, what you're changing.
Mhm.
If you change 2 things at once and it works, you don't know what actually worked.
Yeah,
Right.
it's classic science class. When you
Yeah.
were in elementary school and high school, they would say change one variable. If you change too many things, you're not going to know what's affecting the data.
Right. And if you break it, you don't actually know what broke it. So if you need to change one thing. So let's say for practical purposes here, on the first round of optimizing your email campaign, you're going to do subject line only. Do not touch the body. Whether it's a one-word change, the way you put your phone number, nothing should change in the body because you just don't know. It shouldn't be fonts changed in the body, nothing. Subject line first. Figure out what works and just really focus on that subject line for however long you choose. Then move on to the body and then move on to the pain point and then move on to the little things, how it looks, the time of
Yeah.
day, everything, but one variable at a time. Otherwise, you don't know where you won and you can't go back if you break it because you don't know what part actually broke it.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, I know me personally, I am somebody that is obsessed with learning, obsessed with it. Whether I'm learning, I don't even want to get into it because I have so many different hobbies and things that I learn about. But this, if you care about your business and if you care about building a successful campaign, this is the shit that should excite you, right?
Yeah.
Is testing it out. Like if you want a solution where you just plug it in and then you're done with it, you shouldn't even start to begin to build an email campaign. You shouldn't even get into it. This is not for you. If you care about looking into the data and you care about, oh my gosh, it's so interesting that somebody would click this versus this. This should excite you and also propel you forward to never give up and continue these optimizations.
Yeah. I mean, and to even hammer that home further when we're talking about optimizing, on a personal note, I think one of the biggest personal things about myself I've had to deal with and learn as a marketer is we don't really know anything. We just know how to analyze data, right? And our
Yes.
egos get in the way a ton. So a hasty decision, like for us, when we're running TV commercials, when we first started, it was very easy to fall into that trap of, I know that I should fix these 3 things, and you want everything fixed, and you think that you know how somebody thinks in the actual world and marketplace, but you don't. It never, I mean, I'm sure David would be able to tell you that more times than not, I'm wrong when I have a prediction, and the only thing that tells me what's right and wrong is the data. So you kind of have to just test one thing
Yeah.
at a time.
And
Check
it
the detail.
hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts more for me than it hurts for you, because this is my specialty. And sometimes I'll look at something and I'll say, hey, this is built. I know that with all of my years of design and looking at comparative media, I know this looks good. But at the end of the day, if the data says it doesn't, then it doesn't. And that's all that matters.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
There really is no such thing as bad data. And I'm going to use a quote that is very polarized in today's world, but facts don't care about your feelings.
Yeah. And neither does, your click-through rate on these emails. It's going to be what it is. I mean, Heidi has said that there's no such thing as bad data, like you just said. And if it wasn't for us just using data here, none of the success would be there. If we were just like, we're creative people and we have this figured out, and we would be making commercials that generate calls for $200. Nothing works without optimizing that final step. That's where all of it comes from. And you'll get to the point where you can optimize that into sales. Once you actually send that email out and you've optimized how to get people to open it, now it's what part of this is making a sale? How many turn into a sale? And how do I optimize that final piece? How do I connect it? How do I turn this into dollars in my pocket? And what is that actual number? And how do I lower it? How do I make my marketing cheaper to create the same result?
This is something that a business owner should constantly put thought into. You should always want to grow.
Or if you're not marketing your business in some fashion, you'd have to have a really good local business strummed up where you're just the guy. Otherwise, it's going to die.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, I think that we've covered most everything here. So before we wrap up, let's just fire off these points one more time. Heidi, again, thank you so much for sitting with us and educating Josh and I, right? Josh and I, maybe we're experts in our own respective field, but Heidi really is the champion behind all this and provided us with the information that we needed. And we learned a lot that we're going to take and implement in the things that we do. So 5 steps, okay, to creating a successful email campaign. We had determine your campaign goals and target audience. Extremely important. Build a high quality email list. Create an eye-catching subject line and a compelling email body. Sending using providers, okay? Whether that's through your agency or you're going out to somewhere like Josh mentioned, MailChimp or ConvertKit. Sometimes there'll be barriers with using those, but don't be afraid. There's things out there that can educate you and help you to overcome any question you have. A lot of these providers, they have their own support line that you can message them, and they'll give you steps to achieve whatever you're looking to accomplish inside of that provider. And lastly, testing and optimization. This is something that is never going to end. It's the last and final step, and it's the step that goes on forever and ever and ever, as long as you want your business to keep going.